Yeah, I thought the key words that I've heard this morning are from Karen, and that was for now. For now, because everything is for now at the moment, because so many things, as you quite rightly say, are moving so quickly. The rumours are moving very quickly. Last night there was a whole host of rumours that the 48 votes that the arch Brexiteers needed within her own party to oust her, or to at least to try and force a vote to potentially challenge her for no confidence, that those votes had been attained and that was going to go on. But then when she got to the 1922 committee, she had rapturous applause for 5 minutes, we're told, which may or may not be a good sign for the Prime Minister as well. But she's playing a numbers game here. That is very, very clear. There are 316 Tory MPs, only 316 Tory MPs, because she had such a disastrous electoral campaign, of course, when she went to the country to try and endorse her position. That failed. Of those 316, what Mrs May is counting on is that at least 159, i.e. half plus one, are on the softer side of Brexit and will back her and her Chequers vision for trying to exit the EU as well. Mrs May, of course, going out on the front foot. Did she expect resignations? Well, we can talk about that in a few moments' time. I think it's absolutely key that we talk about the key personnel in key positions as well. But let's hear from the Prime Minister herself and what she had to say yesterday in the Commons.
What we are proposing is challenging for the EU. It requires them... It requires them to think again, to look beyond the positions they've taken so far and agree a new and fair balance of rights and obligations. Because that is the only way to meet our commitments to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland without damaging the constitutional integrity of the UK and while respecting the result of the referendum.
But what Mrs May has managed to do is keep some Brexiteers, for now, again those key words, on side as well. Let's think about who those people are. The likes of Andrea Leadsom, who of course challenged Mrs May herself. The likes of Mr Gove, the Environment Secretary, he's making pretty positive noises. The International Trade Secretary, Liam Fox, he is on board for the moment. And you mentioned Dominic Raab there, taking on what is a very interesting chalice as the Brexit Secretary as well. But as we pointed out in the previous show, Ollie Robbins, who is part of the number 10 team, is pretty much running those negotiations anyway. So Dominic Raab's position will be very interesting. But what is absolutely fascinating is that Mrs May now has all four key roles of state, i.e. the Chancellor, Mr Hammond, the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, as well, and now the new Foreign Secretary are all former Remainers, as indeed is the Prime Minister herself as well. And I think it's probably interesting to listen to the stance of Mr Hunt compared with Mr Johnson, of course, the arch Brexiteer. Let's listen to the new Foreign Secretary.
My principal job at a time of massive importance for our country is to stand foursquare behind the Prime Minister so that we can get through an agreement with the European Union based on what was agreed by the Cabinet last week in Chequers. This is a time when the world is looking at us as a country, wondering what type of country we're going to be in a post-Brexit world. And what I want to say to them is that Britain is going to be a dependable ally, a country that stands up for the values that matter to the people of this country and will be a strong and confident voice in the world.
Many people saying it seems like a last throw of the dice from Mrs May as well. The fact that she now sees this is her position, this is the common stance of the government. And if they can keep on board some of the Brexiteers, if they can get Europe on board as well for a negotiated settlement which isn't too far away from this template, then she may well just pull this off. And perhaps what's working in her favour as well is who wants to be UK Prime Minister at this moment in time. Again, a very poisoned chalice, many would say, very difficult position to being, and perhaps because she's the incumbent, because she's got the job and no one else actually fancies it at this moment in time, perhaps that's actually one of the cards that she has in her favour.
Let's get into some of the negatives, Steve, because Boris Johnson hasn't exactly sailed off into the sunset and taken his hard Brexit dreams with him. So I question what happens next with Boris Johnson and what exactly played out between Friday and Monday, because he was on board with the Chequers plan as we closed up the week, and then suddenly by Monday he's decided to resign.
Yeah, and what is really interesting, Karen, about that is when you and I were talking about David Davis resigning yesterday, he did it as a point of principle. He's the Brexit secretary. He just felt he couldn't sign up to this as well. But I think David Davis has been quoted in the last 24 hours saying he's surprised the foreign secretary has resigned as well, because it wasn't in his remit along to agree or not agree about these Brexit terms. The terms that Mr. Johnson couldn't agree with were all these phrases which tie the UK to the EU, perhaps much greater than his vision, his great off into the sunset, single nation, little islander strategy had been. A common rule book, for instance, on all good. Continued harmonisation on treaties as well. Joint institutional frameworks as well. The ECG still having a role. Cooperative agreements. All of this language is tying us a lot more to the EU going forward than perhaps Mr. Johnson wanted. But what is very interesting, and I don't know if you've noticed this in the country, in the political establishment as well, but many people, on the back of what business has been saying, of what many people in society across the board have been saying, is they don't want a harder form of Brexit as well. So Mrs. May is making a calculation that the country has moved to, yes, still Brexit. Brexit means Brexit in the great lady's words as well, but have moved to a softer version of Brexit as a country as well. And her betting is that her party, the broader political establishment, and indeed the country as a whole has moved to this softer version as well, which is leaving some of the harder Brexiteers perhaps crying on the fringes so much as well. But it'd be very interesting to see if she can keep the Brexiteers split, and that for me is one of the key points as well. She suffers one or two major key resignations from her cabinet, from her government now. I think then we could be back in hot water for the government.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.